My mother. She passed away shortly after giving birth to me, and a place in my father's heart would never heal. It took a lot of time before he finally felt ready to date again, and he didn't want to do it because he was scared that I would not be okay with that. Well, after quite some time, a bunch of years go by, I say, you know what, Dad? Go out there and find someone special to you. Well, he did just that, but what I did not see coming was the fact that he got some woman who was not his age, more closer to my age, and it was so obvious to me that she was going to use him for his money. And that's exactly what happened, because after my father passed away, she tried to kick me out of the family home, but luckily for me, my father, he had a butler that worked for him for a long time, and he wasn't going to let me go. So we came up with a plan of revenge, just to do this. For the last 5 years, I've been living in a very toxic household, where I was neither cared for nor respected. So, when my stepmother, who was just 10 years older than me, threw me out of the house, I was somewhat relieved that I did not have to look at her very vengeful, bitter face every day. The Brown mansion and its people shared a long history with me. Getting thrown out of the same mansion that you lived in all your life can be very disheartening but eye-opening. My name's Renee, was the only and first daughter of Mr. James Brown, and 5 years ago my life was a fairy tale. It was when my dad decided to remarry at the age of 50 that all hell broke loose. Don't get me wrong, I was all in favor of my father remarrying after my mother passed while giving birth to me, but when I gave him the go-ahead, I thought he would just marry someone of his own age, or even near his age group. He went ahead and married a girl who was closer to my age than she was not really close to his age. It was alarming to me and disgusting to my best friend Sarah. Yet my dad was so madly in love that he did not think twice before marrying my now stepmother, Martha. From the very beginning, Martha was never a motherly figure to me. The worst part of it all was that she would pretend to love me and treat me like a friend in front of my father. She was the sweetest cinnamon roll in front of my gullible dad. My father, who was desperate for companionship and thought I needed the female guide through my teenage, was smitten by the beautiful Martha. But Martha was as ugly from the inside as she was beautiful outside. She pretended to be my best friend on the face, but when my father was not around, she would knowingly sabotage me and set traps to hurt me. She would even try to gaslight me, and I tried with my whole heart to accept her as a mother, or at least as a friend. I remember my dad had a conversation with me about giving Martha a chance. I had accidentally spilled chocolate syrup on her summer dress, and she portrayed it like I was knowingly trying to get under her skin. Despite knowing that I was being portrayed as a bad person, I assured my father that I'll give Martha a chance to be my friend. Well, things went somewhat well after that, but it all slowly, just swiftly changed after Martha got married to Dad. Once she became his wife, her thin mask started to come off. She would now be openly vengeful to me, saying how she hated me and wanted to get rid of me so that she can be the only girl in my father's life. She always thought that my dad loved me more than her, and that gave rise to a jealousy and competition in her eyes. Although she was hateful to me, she would portray me in front of my father that I was the one being hateful and hurtful to her. The conflict between us heightened when my little brother Tristan was born. Well, I tried to repair my relationship with Martha for the children's sake. She always thought that I threatened her and Tristan's status in my dad's life. After Tristan was born, she was not only hurtful but also turned greedy. She wanted to secure the entire estate to her and Tristan's name, and after Tristan was born, she tried pressurizing my father into signing off all his hard-earned money and property to the small child's name. My father was already suffering from failing health, and This pressure got on his nerves more and more, and towards the end of his life, Martha tried to convince my father that I was just a spoiled, rotten brat who does not deserve the estate or money. A week ago, my father passed, and I'm afraid that he died thinking that he could not raise me properly. What if he died thinking I had become an immature, spoiled brat who did not respect people? My father's death had been sudden, and while the family doctor did confirm that he died of a heart attack, I often think whether Martha was directly or indirectly responsible for his death. The moment of my father's death, I saw a change come over that woman. She was no longer my stepmom, she was simply the mistress of the estate who was now living in their giant estate unchallenged and unbridled. Since my father died, Martha had not spoken a word to me. She was completely holed up in her room, and even on the dining table she would act like I did not exist. Not like it bothered me much, because at least I was being unbothered as I processed my grief. However, it would have helped to have a motherly figure by my side as I moved on from my father's sudden passing. That was until today, this morning, when she barged into my room without knocking and took out all my clothings and dumped them in the backyard and set a fire to them. She then told me to get lost from the mansion, and I was so taken aback by this sudden attack on me that I could not first process my words. The only sentence I could manage to speak was, "This is my home." To this, my scheming stepmother chuckled and simply said, "Not anymore." She then took me by the arm and dragged me back to the back gate and pushed me out of the mansion grounds. By the time I could protest, she had already shut the gate in my face. I was lost and looked at the mansion wistfully. How could something so familiar to me seconds ago look so strange and unfamiliar to me now? Is this how people looked at the mansion from afar? I touched the brown mansion nameplate and laughed at the irony that despite being a brown, I was displaced from what is my birthright. I did not know where to go, and it was awfully cold too. Feeling helpless and lost, I slumped by the brick gateway under the nameplate, and I started crying and feeling hungry as an hour passed. I must have slept out, of hunger, because it was the fall of raindrops on my face that woke me. The rain was a drizzle, but I was afraid the pace will increase and my clothes will be drenched. I looked up and hoped the rain would stop soon. It made me realize I only had the clothes on my back and some money in my pocket. It was then that the small side gate swung open and a slender elderly figure slunk out of the house. He had this black umbrella in his hand, which matched the black tuxedo he wore every day. It was no other than our butler, Mr. Smith. He was as old as my grandfather and well in his 70s, yet he was fit and committed to serving the family. He nodded at me and handed over the umbrella to me silently so that I could protect myself from the rain. I took the umbrella from him with shaky hands and then asked him if he could sit with me before I leave the place. He obliged, and then I asked him if he ever thought I would be a poor and homeless kid. He said that wealth is only transitory. As my father's oldest friend and aide, Smith had seen many ups and downs in his life, and he reminded me that my father was indeed a self-made man. He was never this rich, but he made himself into the tycoon that he was. I looked at the mansion wistfully, and as if Smith could only read my thoughts, he told me something that stayed with me for a very, very long time. He told me how this mansion was bought only after I was born to make sure that I was given a comfortable childhood. This mansion, which was bought for me and my upbringing, can never be taken away from me. Smith reminded me firmly that I was still the only daughter of James Brown, the business tycoon and basically a public icon in our city. Many times I heard my father say these words, "It's not how a person behaves when he has everything, but how he behaves when he has nothing that makes the difference." That is the difference between me and Martha today. I cannot snoop down to Martha's level. She can go to any extent to make me a homeless orphan with no name, and I will not let her get under my skin. Yet, my heart grew heavy when I had a bid adieu to my longtime home, the place where my father brought me from the hospital. I told Smith to return inside, lest Martha would start screeching for him, and the staff at Brown Mansion had seen me grow up, and I was sad that I had to leave them behind. However, Mr. Smith's silent support meant that he will help me out of this dreary situation. You see, Smith was very handy, and my father blindly trusted his multifaceted skills. There were many times that my father listened to Smith's advice, so I felt I should too. Smith then went on to say that I should look at this incident as an opportunity to step out of the shadow of Martha and explore my own life and my own purpose. I thought over what Smith had told me just now and realized that he was not wrong. When I was getting ready to bid adieu to my loyal confidant, he stopped me to my surprise. Smith handed over a box and a bag to me. I opened up the box and it had a lot of money. The bag had many important documents, some food that the staff had cooked for dinner, and 3 pairs of clothing. He gently advised me to spend the money wisely, instead of draining it out completely, and his grandfatherly voice made me chuckle a bit, but also gave me a good warning. I nodded in affirmation and waved him goodbye and started trudging down the road. Sometime later, my phone rang from my pocket of my track pants, and I'd completely forgotten that I had my phone on me. When my life pushes the reset and rediscover button, you tend to forget everything. Luckily, the call was from my childhood best friend, Sarah. Sarah and her family had known us even before we became rich. Sarah's father was my father's best friend, and when my father amassed wealth, he made sure that his best friend had the opportunity to improve his life. Sarah's father was now the chief operations officer at Brown Industries, and pretty well off. When I saw Sarah's name pop up on the phone screen, my heart started to calm down. I knew if there was anyone I could depend on, it would be Sarah. I picked up the call and tried not to panic and told her to meet me at the nearest cafe as soon as possible. From my voice, Sarah must have known that something is wrong because she asked 0 questions before confirming that she was on her way. It was 15 minutes later that we were sitting at the Peaches Cafe, and I explained the whole situation to Sarah for 5 minutes. She was completely silent. After hearing about my predicament, Sarah offered 2 ways to me. She said 2 things could happen from here on. Either I was coming to live with her, or we could ask her dad to get a bulldozer, break down the walls of that Brown mansion, and as a bonus, injure Martha so badly that she does not get to meddle into my inheritance for at least a year. I didn't know whether to be disgusted by her second plan or cackle evilly in support. I took a deep breath and told her how Smith wanted me to go out and try to live independently. The break from my toxic stepmom could, help me find my feet and plant them strongly so that nothing like this could ever happen to me again. Whatever happened to me till now has only made me realize the value of money and financial independence. Smith was right. Whether I get my true inheritance or not, I have to create my own wealth in life, and I told her how, instead of focusing on bringing her down, I have to focus on making myself strong. Revenge can wait. To this, Sarah responded with a bit of disappointment, but soon recovered herself. She then went on to take me to her home, which will be my home till I get my rights to Brown's mansion. I assured her that I was not so broke that I could not foot my own bills, and thanked her for offering me her home. She brushed it away like nothing and joked that even if I was homeless, she would still take me in as my best friend, and I sent out a silent prayer to the heavens above as we headed to Sarah's residence, thanking the Lord for helping me out in these mysterious ways. Update number 1. When we reached Sarah's house, I was greeted with a lot of warmth and sympathy for what happened. Uncle Ramirez and Aunt Esser were old friends of my mom and dad. There were times I felt that if my mom would be alive, she would look almost like Aunt Esser. Getting their supports and kind words at such a difficult time helped me a lot. After making sure I was comfortable and calm, Uncle Ramirez asked if I had any plans of legally challenging Martha's actions. I told him how I wanted to see my father's will. To this, Uncle Ramirez said he's not sure where it is, if it exists, but he can surely set up a meeting with Mr. Lafferty, my father's legal advisor. Uncle Ramirez and Aunt Esser were equally disgusted by the actions of Martha. They said that there was always speculation that Martha would act like this after my father's death, but they did not think it would be so soon. Needless to say, the entire Ramirez family had some choice words to say about Martha. The kind couple who were also my godparents assured me that they will try everything in their power to stop Martha from taking over the Brown property and inheritance. However, today's battles weighed heavily, and making sure I got enough rest after a harrowing day was their priority. As I rose up to go to the guest bedroom for the night, I asked Uncle Ramirez to fix an appointment with Lafferty for the next morning. Uncle Ramirez was also kind enough to promise that he will help me in investing my father's money judiciously. He, however, shooed me away to bed like a kid, and I was happy I had a family environment around me. Later in the guest bedroom, Sarah came for a sleepover to make me feel better, and she did not ask me about future plans or the uncertainty of my father's will. She simply stayed by my side and watched my favorite series with me. I slowly drifted off to sleep and was thankful that I did not end up like a homeless, uncared-for child. Update number 2. And the next morning, while I was going down for breakfast with the Ramirez family, I was surprised to find Smith already there. The Brown family's legal advisor, Mr. Lafferty, was also present. Uncle Ramirez was patiently waiting with Aunt by his side. I suggested we should all start breakfast and discuss the matters as the meal progressed. I looked over at Smith with a puzzled expression. Surely the man did not drop by simply because he was missing his favorite kid. Smith looked pensive and livid. It was weird to be directly addressed and talked to, and for many years I had been privy to such table conversations that my father had with his trusted aide. I understand that I had to get used to filling his shoes. When I asked Mr. Lafferty about whether my father left a will or not, he confirmed that his latest will was a month old, which he had directed to be opened in my presence as the sole heir. Sole heir? That word rang in my ears and went deep into my stomach. I took a gulp of water, as if to down and digest that word and what it meant. I should be happy that I was the sole heir and Martha was wrong, but I was trying to grasp all the responsibility that awaited me. I was sad that Tristan and Martha did not have anything to their name. My father was not a man who would leave Tristan out. He loved this small boy to bits, and when I further inquired about this, Lafferty did not say much, but said that there must be some arrangement for Martha and Tristan. After breakfast, when all of us gathered in the living room to look at the dad's will, it was Smith who spoke first. Before Lafferty could open my father's will, Smith interrupted, saying he wanted to share some recordings related to Martha. His tone was low and disappointing, and I had started worrying about what really was in those recordings. Smith played a video recording where Martha was speaking to some man on her phone. In the video, which seems to be taken stealthily, she is seen calling one frantically and muttering the name Jared, somewhat annoyed. By the end of the video, it was clear that she was calling Jared her long-term boyfriend. Jared and Martha were seeing each other for 2 years now. In the video, she freely spoke of how she was so relieved that she no longer had to pretend to be loyal to James. She could now openly meet Jared and not feel guilty either. She was very happy that day because she successfully threw me out of the mansion. Honestly, the whole thing went down easier than she thought it will be. She was asking her boyfriend to come over to Brown Mansion since I was not around anymore. She believed she could sneak Jared in, saying he's a cousin, and spend some time with him at the Brown Mansion. It was evident that the two were in an affair and wanted to take all the wealth of the Brown family for themselves. I was absolutely shocked. I did not expect Martha to be so immoral and wrong, and I always imagined that she married my father for the money, but to have even more incriminating proof against her was revolting and absolutely sad. I asked Smith if the man came home to meet Martha and whether he had needed some more proof. To this, Smith said that he could make out what the man was being a little more careful and wanted to wait till legal confirmation to actually come to the Brown mansion. I took a deep breath and turned towards Lafferty. Please tell me we can stop this woman from getting her dirty hands on my father's property. Lafferty smiled, that of a sympathetic smile. He offered his help by asking one of his subordinates to check the background of one Jared Hayes. Smith was able to find the full name of Martha's boyfriend from her social media handles. He then took out the will from the envelope and read it aloud. By the time he was done, we were sure of one thing. All the wealth in the company was going to me. My father, though he had his disagreements and misunderstandings with me, made sure that the majority of the inheritance would go to me. Some parts of the property were written under Martha and Tristan's name, but it was conditional to one statement. Turns out, my father was already suspicious that Martha had started to cheat on him. In his will, he mentioned that there needs to be an investigation into whether Martha is a loyal wife and a good mother. With the proof that Smith had recorded and the actions that she had done after my father's death, we can deem her unfit to inherit part of the inheritance. In fact, with the new facts that have come to light, I'm entitled to throw her out of the mansion. I was only waiting for some more concrete proof information about Jared and Martha before cutting her off from my life forever. I should have been happy with the discovery and the opportunity to throw the woman out of the house. However, it only made me sad. It made me realize that I've lost all hope of ever finding something good in Martha. Uncle Ramirez broke the unsettling silence that had dropped like a veil of the gathering. He gently nudged me and asked what I planned to do next. I wanted the incidents to play out naturally. If Martha's so eager to enjoy my father's inheritance, she would reach out to Lafferty one day or the other, and I did not want to burst her bubble just yet. I asked Lafferty about how to stop her from taking over my father's property now that we knew she did not deserve any of it. I discussed this further with Lafferty and Uncle Ramirez because I did not want Tristan to be punished because of his mother's actions. Now, we simply had to wait for Martha to call Lafferty for an appointment. The call came the next day when an eager Martha asked Lafferty to come to the mansion so she could discuss my father's assets and belongings. Update number 3. Well, it was the next day when Martha was standing in the living room and searching for Smith. She asked him to arrange a meeting with Lafferty today, and she had to get her inheritance settled at the earliest so she could start living a rich widow's socialite life. She was worried Smith had not set up a meeting to stop her from taking over the mansion. She always knew Smith had a mind of his own. She was relieved when Smith appeared from the garden and said Lafferty is already here, and making his way into the living room. She then went on to plop herself down on the seat and gain composure. Her face was overconfident and smug, and it was a pleasure to see her facial expression change from smugness to livid, and then to hatred when she heard my voice. She turned around and saw me standing on the balcony above the living area, and before she could ask what I was doing in the house, Lafferty entered from the front door. My stepmother had to pretend to be normal in front of him, and she did not know that more shocks awaited her. She was trying to act as the gracious hostess and indirectly discussing her inheritance when Lafferty said in a very cool business tone that she has no right to the Brown inheritance. This made my stepmom positively mad, and she lashed out at me saying all this was my plot to exact revenge. I told her how we had proof that she had been unfaithful to my father, and she had dug her own grave with her Clandestine relationship. I was only trying to get what was rightfully mine. If karma served her a bitter dish, it was made from her pantry. At first, she tried to be indignant and said she does not know what I was talking about. She claimed that I knew about the will beforehand and the video was a fake video, made to accuse her and disqualify her from her part of the inheritance. Lafferty told her how I had inherited the majority of the estate, and for the cruelty she had shown to me, she should anyways be investigated. He then went on to reveal what he had found out about Martha's boyfriend Jared, and all the findings made Martha go dumbstruck for quite some time. Once she got to know that she's lost everything because of her foolish decisions, she decided to beg and grovel at my feet just to keep her in the house and let her stay. If it had been any other day, I would have let her stay, but because of her faithfulness and pretense, I ordered the guards to escort her out of the mansion. From then on, I took sole responsibility for Brown Mansion and Tristan, eventually. I also took over Brown Industries as the CEO. Martha was now only a figment of the past and a blurry figure for the Brown family. I just want to say, thank goodness for all the helpful people in this story who helped out Renee, Sarah, Mr. Smith, I mean the list goes on. If it wasn't for all these people, I think OP, when she gets kicked out of the house, would have actually lost all self-esteem and not gone after this crazy lady who just thinks that she can marry OP's father who passes away and take everything. Well, that's not how the inheritance worked, and luckily for OP, she was able to get a bit of revenge. But let's shout out to Sarah, who took OP in when she had nothing, not a place to stay, and was basically kicked out onto the streets. Guys, this story was pretty crazy. I do want to hear from you. If you were in OP's position, and you find out your new stepmother is barely 10 years older than you, what do you do about that? When you know she's just in it for the money, how do you react? Go ahead and drop a comment down below. I want to thank you guys for joining me on today's videos. My name's Mr. Reddita. I narrate stories every single day. This story was more of an inheritance drama, but it did have cheating involved and some other things, and we do cover a lot of topics. I'm talking mother-in-law dispute. Heck, any in-law dispute. We've seen sister-in-law, father-in-law, brother-in-law, mother-in-law. You name it, we've seen it. Inheritance dramas like today. We have all sorts of stuff, so hit that subscribe button. I hope to see you guys tomorrow, and just remember, you never know what someone's going through in life, so I like to stick by this motto, and I try to say it every single day. It's cool to be kind. See ya.